Hi, I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Training, my pleasure to welcome you to our 23rd Nonprofit Empowerment Webinar. This one is called Fundraising is Sales. Tell you what, before I bring on our esteemed guest, John Largent is our producer. He is CEO of Game Day Media. Since the first time we've sneezed with these webinars, he's the one that makes it a smooth sailing. And we're going to thanks inspired by our guest, who I'm going to bring on in about 15 seconds. We're going to do things a little differently, but wait till you hear, not this week, what we're doing next week, Jack. John is going to tell you about logistics and how you can type in your questions. And as suggested by Sir Jack Warkenthien, I'm not going to ask. John is going to tactfully tell us when he asks questions from the audience. But unfortunately, the guest won't see it next week. Maybe you'll watch us. But we're going to put our questioning attendees on camera, image, and voice. We've worked that out. So, John, why don't you talk a little about the logistics?
Sure thing, Jim. Welcome everybody to this week's webinar. I just want to remind you that you can type in your questions in the Q&A chat down at the bottom of your screen if you're on your laptop, or at the upper side of the screen if you're on your tablet or phone. And as those questions come in, I will be able to find an avenue to ask those questions directly rather than waiting till the end like we did normally. So we're going to try something new this week and enjoy the webinar.
Hey, John, hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you a question because I decided not to ask the guest. One of the toughest things in the movie game is to do a sequel, because usually it's never as good as the first movie. But I'm thinking one exception. Godfather 2 gave Godfather 1 a real run for the money. You got to remember, I love the 50s and 60s and Rat Pack era, and that was set up in Nevada. So, but we have the challenge. I want to bring in my good friend and sensei, Jack Warkenthien, who is the founder and CEO of NextStep Solutions. And Jack, how are you doing in Houston? Last time you had a hurricane watch.
Yeah, we're doing well today. And at the end of the day, golf is so overrated, Jim, that I'd much rather do a webinar with you than be on the golf course this afternoon.
But wouldn't you agree? Jack led a webinar last week. It was called Learning from Sales Savvy. And there was so much interest because it's really never been covered again before. We decided we got to take them away from the golf course the second week in a row. Thank you for coming back, Jack. And when you agree, it's tough to make a sequel, but we're going to do it, okay?
Absolutely, and we're looking forward to it. So fasten your seatbelt. I want to give a shout out to another friend I saw that's in the attendee room, and that's Justin Drury. Again,
friend. Last week. Welcome back, Justin.
That's right. He's a friend from a long time ago, and he's a friend of the boys in Denver, and so always great to have him. He works in the sales capacity.
Did he just get married, or going to get married?
Yes, he did.
Well, where I come from, Justin, we would say muzzle top. And by the way, we're saying that sales and fundraising are like two sides of a coin. That's something that Jack and I have discovered in our discussions. And I was so proud 6 weeks ago to have Laura Fredericks on, who's probably the best known and respected fundraising expert on the planet. And I'm glad to have back my friend from yesteryear, but we reconnected, Jack Warkenthien, who I'm a little jealous of. He's done so much during his career. He set sales records with a little company called IBM. He's been active in civic and business and community organizations. He's authored a best-selling book called Life's a Sales Call. He can't even tell me how many speeches, and he's going to be a mentor to me. Hey, Jack, before here, take a second to talk about your book.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Actually, I'm on a pace since 2005. I try to write a book every 5 years. And so the first book I ever wrote was the same name, Life's a Sales Call, How to Succeed in the World's Oldest Profession. And the premise here, and Jim, you can understand this, is when I do speeches and I follow my books around the country, they look at the cover, they're real curious, how to succeed in the world's oldest profession. What usually comes to mind when you challenge an audience to name the world's oldest profession? What do you think, Jim?
I think call girls.
Call girls, prostitutes, right? But at the end of the day,
by the way, I said call girls, not prostitutes.
that's exactly right. At the end of the day, that's nothing but a sales call, isn't it?
Oh, geez.
So my premise is the world's oldest profession has to be sales, because think about it, and this is the theme of the book. Who was the first salesperson in recorded history?
Adam?
Well, no, actually it was Eve. But you're close, right church, wrong garden.
Yeah.
So you think about Eve, she was the first salesperson in recorded history, and what was the first product she sold?
How about the apple?
The apple, exactly. So she's the one that sold the apple. So ever since that day, she has been acknowledged as the first salesperson in history. And then, Jim, you can appreciate at least this side of the Bible. Think about Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the 10 suggestions. I mean, the 10 commandments.
Yeah.
You know, the whole world has been moved by a compelling sales call. So as the world's oldest profession, the theme of the first book and my third book is you, whether you like it or not, are part of the oldest profession. And even if it doesn't say salesperson on the bottom, you are always in sales, trying to sell a product, a service, a gift, an opinion, trying to sell your kids to catch the bus at 7 o'clock instead of sleep in, sell your teacher on an A instead of a B. So the 2/3 of the books I've written over the past 10, 15 years have to do with sales for the ordinary person. The people who don't necessarily make a living, but they have to up their skills, much like your fundraisers when they're asking gifts from donors. And then in the middle of my two sales books, the first edition and the second edition, which I published about 4 years ago, we published a cookbook. My sister and I collaborated and created a book called Ma's Cookbook. Her language of love is food. And we did this to honor my ma because she's a Sicilian woman who prides in her cooking. And we published that book between my two sales books. And guess what? People on Amazon are obviously more interested in Italian food than sales, because her book outsells mine 4-1 on Amazon.
I'm going to put you on the spot. In the Warkenthien family, what's the favorite recipe in the cookbook? What dish?
You asking me?
Yeah.
I love her pasta dishes. I love her lasagna, artichokes. Those are all of my favorite. Her breaded veal cutlets, breaded pork chops, all of those are my favorite.
Well, okay, we're going to move from veal cutlets to fundraising and sales. We've learned there's so much action and savvy that fundraisers can learn from sales gurus. And I was talking about Laura Fredericks. She knows more about fundraising than anybody I know on the planet. Jack Warkenthien knows more about sales than anybody on the planet. So Jack, thanks for coming back for a second week in a row. You know, we have 1.5 million nonprofits. Let's see if you remember. Guess how many we have in the state of Texas?
I forgot what the number, but it was pretty substantial, like over 500,000 or 40,000.
Close, 100,000. And in San Antonio, we got 6,000. And we have a little tradition. We want everybody to type in those 3 words, that we're here to support each other through these webinars and having smart people like Jack Warkenthien. Type in Nonprofit Strong. I'm going to ask you, Jack, what are we?
We are Nonprofit Strong.
You bet we are. And I was a little behind Jack. We consider ourselves kindred spirits. He has been fanatical about teaching the art and science of sales. It took me a little longer after being a practitioner in higher education for about 25 years. I noticed that community and business leaders were fearless in everything they did, but asking for a gift for their favorite charity. And so June of 2018, my wife and Andrea and I launched Eskin Fundraising Training, and we declared war on fear of asking for a gift. And Jack is going to add some tools to our toolkit. And we're real proud. We're lining up our webinars for the fall season. And I'm excited. There's going to be a lot of different perspectives. By the way, everyone's going to be sent the recording and slides. We'd like to get you into our database, so not only do you receive our monthly newsletter, but you'll be invited to each of these webinars, okay? I'm a little behind. Jack, I sold, let me see, 14 copies this week, and I think I'm only 134,000 copies behind you in like the sales call. But I got the big momentum. I got the big, and I was going to ask you, okay? I was going to ask, by the way, I think we had 20 questions, got through 10 of them last week, and so we're ready for another 10. Jack, last week kind of drew parallels between the fundraising gift cycle and
Can I ask your viewers a question today to start with?
Oh, yeah, hey, that's great.
Actually, two of them, since we kind of alluded to that best-selling book in history, the Bible.
Life's a Sales Call? Oh.
The Bible, that's right. No, right after Life's a Sales Call. And the two questions I'd like your viewers to ask themselves is, number one, how did you sell BC? And in this case, BC means before Corona. The second question is, how will you sell AD? And AD means after disease. So to put in perspective, I'm asking and challenging them what is going to be different in their approach to asking for gifts now that we're needy in COVID-19. They also must change their approach. I don't hear you, Jim. You're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
You hear me okay?
I do now.
Okay, I'm going to throw a bonus question. And now we've done this for 2 weeks. I might push you a little, okay? My question is, okay, before I go to my 10 questions and before we go to the audience, and John is going to tactfully come in. He knows how to see when we're breathing, and he'll come in precisely the right moment. But this is the gift cycle, and you compared the sales cycle with opening intention, and I learned some stuff. But my question to you for Jack is, what do you think influences the customer or the donor's final decision more? The appeal or the personality of the salesperson or the fundraiser, or the appeal of the product and or the nonprofit?
Well, that's a very easy question, and it's going to surprise a lot of people. When you're asking a donor for a gift, the number one thing that will move them to action is the appeal and the story of the benefactor. There is nothing else that comes close. That's the number one reason. If they feel engaged, if you have touched them emotionally with a story about a benefactor, they will justify the gift and go back and talk themselves into it intellectually. They'll make the decision emotionally and justify with logic. But again, we get so focused on selling the gift instead of what is really important, and that is the desired outcome of that gift. You may recall me using the metaphor in the past in sales where people don't really care about electric drills. What people really care about are 1/4-inch holes. Are you with me so far?
Yep.
But you don't even sell the 1/4-inch holes. What you really sell is what are the 1/4-inch holes used for? And the answer is they're used to put a shelf on the wall. So are you selling shelves on the wall? No, you're not selling shelves on the wall. You're selling the ability to unclutter your bedroom by taking things that are sitting on the floor and putting them in a nice, convenient place out of the mainstream. So at the end of the day, you're selling peace, you're selling a clear mind, and you're selling a desired outcome. You're not selling a gift.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate, which I'm not very often. We have the same story. One is told by a gifted storyteller like Jack Warkenthien, and the same story is told by a mediocre storyteller named Jim Eskin. Isn't there a difference?
What's interesting, there are two components of a story, the driver and the delivery. And so not everyone can be a perfect storyteller, but the more powerful the driver, the less influence the delivery. And so if you remember, Jim, we keep the emphasis off of you and me, and we create a word picture in the mind of the donor where you're highlighting, you're focusing on one benefactor of their gift, and you're telling his or her story. That's what moves them emotionally more than any way you can tell the story, is a desired outcome.
Sort of like saving the world one child at a time, right? And we'll show that child.
Yeah, but you have to stay out of the cliche business. It's all about.
That's hard for me.
I know, but it's all about. I call it POSSER. I'm gonna throw this in today, Jim, at no extra cost to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have an acronym that helps me frame every story I tell, and that's POSSER. POSR. And if you remember that, in fact, I'm going to type it into the. I'm going to type it into the chat room. Remember POSSER, and that will remind you that a story contains 4 components. Problem. This is where you're focusing on the problem or the challenge of one of your benefactors. Pick a charity, Jim, one of your favorite charities, and I'll try to meld it into an example.
Okay, United Way.
United Way, okay.
You noticed I was very safe. I wanted to be kind of very broad.
I thought you were going to talk about the Eskin Foundation, but United Way is a good one as well. So
maybe the Barnabas Society.
Yeah, the Barnabas Society. Okay, here's another good one. So we have the Barnabas Society, and we have a person who lives in a mobile home in North Carolina. Now, Helen is very sick right now, but she cannot afford treatment, nor can she afford the transportation to see her to a doctor's office. So Helen is stuck. She's sick without the time, talent, and resources to really figure out what's going on. That's the problem. The opportunity is, what if St. Barnabas can write her out a check and give her the opportunity to not have to worry about the finances, but pays for her Uber ride to a hospital, pays her copay, perhaps gives her enough money for a meal on the way to or from. That would probably make Helen feel very, very special. So the solution is she's going to receive a check from St. Barnabas, let's say in the amount of $200. And the solution was she's going to get this check, she's going to cash it, and the results are she's going to have $200 in her pocket to pay for her transportation, to pay for a meal, to pay her copay, and get her back home And so I'm asking you to think of Helen when you think of investing in one of our gifts for the Barnabas Society.
And by the way, folks, I cheated, Jack. I didn't even introduce you other than saying you're a mediocre golfer. But
Yeah, that's true.
part of it is, Jack, besides being the foremost sales authority on the planet that I know, there might be somebody in New Zealand, but I don't know them. Okay? But Jack knows the world of nonprofits because he has the heart that he formed his own nonprofit and funded his nonprofit and does all of its work anonymously, doesn't it?
Yes. In fact, last week I mentioned, and I always study nonprofits, Jim, for the same reason you do. Last week I mentioned the Rabbit Hood Foundation. In terms of
New York
helping
City, I love them.
New York City, in terms of helping your audience today, I'd like to highlight Charity Water. Are you familiar with them?
Their graphics are.
Well, think about Charity Water and how you can emulate their model. Scott Harrison started this in New York City in 2006. After he was a volunteer serving Liberia with mercy ships, he recognized people had no access to fresh water. So he created this foundation, but here's what makes it special. He has a unique value proposition. You've heard other fundraisers, you've heard other not-for-profits talk about 100% of the money goes towards the gift, goes towards the cause, goes towards finding water sources to the people. They not only do that, but he also has a separate business model with a separate set of donors that pay his operating expenses and business expenses. So if somebody donates $100 on their MasterCard and a 3% service fee is charged by MasterCard, he has a separate bucket and a separate business model of money that's raised to pay operating expenses, salaries, and that type of thing. The other thing that Charity Water does that we can all learn from is they count, they quantify everything, and they share these results with people all over the world. So when I donate with them, I know, and I'm looking at an example, I know how many people they've served. I know that they've funded 56,759 water projects. I know people that have been served 11,427,234 people. So donors like to know the quantified. They like to know numbers.
Impact.
Impact.
Hey, so, Jack, we had 20 questions. I got through 10 of them last week. I'm going to pick up where we left off, if that's okay.
You bet.
And John is tactfully going to come in when the audience wants to know something. And whatever happens, Jack has got a big night out in town, and Andrea and I are going to have a little night downstairs. And so we're going to end this party at 5 o'clock, whatever happens. Jack, in the nonprofit world, it usually takes, what do you call the HIPPO, the highest paid, whatever professional?
Highest paid person's opinion.
Yeah, okay. When I was working in the universities, it was the president, it was the Alamo colleges, it was the chancellor. When you're asking for the $1 million gift, typically it was the HIPPO who asked for it. Whether they were good at it or not, and then that's a different issue. But does the same rationale apply in sales?
What rationale? Be specific what the rationale you're referring to.
Okay. I'm going to ask Jack Warkenthien for a $10 million gift, his largest gift. So I'm Eskin University, okay? And I'm going to bring the chancellor of Eskin University because I'm dead now, but a university's named after me. The chancellor is the HIPPO. So he's going to ask Jack Warkenthien for $10 million at Eskin University.
Oh, I don't mean to take a side trail, but just today, do you know what was in the news in Houston regarding fundraising?
Uh-oh.
Rice University just received their largest gift in history, $100 million.
That's a good day. I wish I
That's
was
a,
the vice president of advancement there. Tell us a little about it. And I feel embarrassed that I
no,
didn't
you
do that.
shouldn't feel embarrassed.
I am.
This was an enterprise that wanted to fund a whole new school and department at Rice having to do with chemical engineering and research. And this enterprise donated $100 million to fund not only the infrastructure, but the people that need to make it happen at Rice University. So you worked in the university.
Yeah.
How would you feel about bringing in $100 million check next week?
I'd probably be going out to dinner with you.
So the answer is you have to be careful. The gift size is not as important as what that gift means to the particular donor. As I mentioned last week in form of a review, $100 gift from somebody who is, relatively middle class probably means a whole lot more than that $1 million gift for another donor. So you have to put it in perspective. But the one thing in your research that you must do before the ask is really understand the power and the net worth, approximately, of the donor you're asking the gift.
Yeah.
If you know that information, you put it in perspective, and the gift must be asked specifically by you to scale with what is in the comfort to a little discomfort for the donor.
Right. Hey, Jack, you're going to be curious with this introduction to my question. Have you seen a lot of the Rocky movies? I don't
I've
know.
seen all of them, and I love them.
Wow, wow. They once asked, I love this, Sylvester Stallone, would you rather take a boxer and teach him acting or take an actor and teach him boxing? And you know what he said? And then I'm going to get to your question. You know what he said?
No.
He'd rather take the actor and teach him how to box. Okay. Maybe. Okay. Here's my question. Would you rather take a proven salesperson and turn them into a nonprofit fundraiser, or vice versa?
Fundraiser and a salesperson. I probably would take a salesperson and move them into the realm of fundraising because they've already perhaps had training, experience, quotas, selling products, probably tangible, maybe intangible, because all you're doing in that transition is changing the story and changing the ask. But the person already has the fundamentals to be successful in sales. Whereas if you took somebody from the nonprofit realm, they may not have the universe, they may not have the experience or track record to be comfortable moving into corporate America in a B2B sales capacity, for instance.
By the way, Andrea is not going to like this, but I love movie trivia. You said you've seen all the Rocky movies. Besides Rocky, my favorite character was Apollo Creed, okay?
Yeah.
You know, Carl Weathers. I thought he was so good.
He was.
And he used to play football for the Raiders. Did you know that?
I did know
He was
that.
a football player. And,
I did know that.
You know, don't too much. Hey, listen, talking about knowing too much, everybody hates cold calls. What is your advice on cold calls?
I hate cold calls too. In fact, I would not waste one erg of energy making a cold call nowadays. I don't believe in them. They're not productive. You can go back and look at studies from Baylor University and show you precisely how useless and what a waste of your time and energy is making cold calls. Now,
I will encourage, so let me stop you there 1 second. Every director of development, report that back to your executive director or your board chair. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, now I will tell you. What I espouse and what I teach is how to take the chill out of cold calls. And what I mean by that is there is no reason you cannot be given a name, a contact that you've never met before, And I teach my method called 3x1, or actually 3x3. You remember that? 3x3 means if I'm given Jim Eskin's name and I don't know him from Adam or Eve, by the way, I will invest 3 minutes to learn 3 things about Jim Eskin before I get on the phone or make an appointment with him. Because if I did not invest 3 minutes to learn 3 things, that's the 3x3 method, I would not be taking the chill out of cold calls. And so by looking you up, I would go to 3 places. I would Google Jim Eskin, God forbid.
LinkedIn.
I would go to your Stratagems website and learn a little about it.
I like you even more. I like you even more.
And finally, I would go to your LinkedIn profile and I would print that out. And so by the time you and I talk, I sound like I know you a whole lot better than I really do, but I know I know a little about you. And so I can have a conversation. And just by doing that, it is no longer a cold call. It is a warm call, maybe even a hot call, depending on what you learn.
Sounds like Jack took the chill out of the cold call.
No doubt.
Hey, Jack, the assumption is that the extrovert personality has an edge in sales. Can an introvert be effective in sales?
I'm so glad you asked that question, and here's why. When you ask a person or an audience who most likely will be the best salesperson, an extrovert or an introvert?
Yeah.
And the answer is somewhere in the middle. It is not the extreme extrovert. It is not the extreme introvert.
Is that what we call a midvert?
A midtrovert. Yeah, let's see. Midtrovert. I guess that sounds better than pervert, doesn't it? Yeah, probably a midtrovert. Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's a real surprise. So don't kid yourself. If you're not an extreme introvert or extrovert, jump somewhere in the middle and have the characteristics of both, because they are both needed in a sales capacity.
You know, there's this perception that fundraisers, director of developments, and salespeople jump around to a lot of different employers. What's it take for an effective fundraiser or salesperson to really call a new employer their own?
Ask the question in another way.
Okay. What do I do? I'm a fundraiser and I got a big raise to join a new nonprofit. What should I do? It's week 1.
Got it. Oh, I love it, love it. The best investment you can make are to talk to the benefactors, talk to the other fundraisers, understand the story they're telling, understand their track record, their history, understand the presentations they're making, but above all, begin with the end in mind. And that is, if I come in tomorrow, my first day of work, and I receive a $1,000 gift, where is that money going to be invested?
Yeah.
And you need to know that by percentage, by distribution. That's the best thing you can learn, because as the late, great Stephen Covey reminded us, begin with the end in mind.
I love it. I love it. I'm a Covey nut.
Hey, I got a question here. They just want to know what the acronym POSSER.
POSSER.
Yeah, POSSER.
Yeah. The 4 words are problem, opportunity, solution, results. It's the way you frame a testimony and a story, focusing on what the problem is. Next, what the opportunity is for that person in solving the problem. Next, why your not-for-profit is the solution to their problem. are as results. By donating $1,000 towards charity water, you have now been able to provide water to 200 people for a year. That's the result of your generous gift today.
Okay. Hey, Jack, a best practice in nonprofit land, you know, we have board of directors and we ask them who can they introduce us to from their personal, their business, and their civic networks. What is your advice? And so a board member will introduce a prospect to Jim Eskin, the fundraiser, who's ultimately going to ask for the gift. Talk about how the fundraiser should take over a relationship like that so they can ask for a gift.
Yeah, this is one of the greatest and most popular workshops that our clients ask us for is how to harvest referrals, how to harvest warm introductions, because you always have three parties involved. It's a triangle. You have you, Jim Eskin, of course, at the top of the food chain.
I like that.
You have the referral source on one corner, and you have the referred party on the other corner. So it's always a triangle. You, the referral source, in your case, it's the board member, and the referred party. What you're doing before Jim Eskin ever talks to that referred party, you must understand that you're borrowing the equity of the relationship you already have with the referral source. And the number one thing the referral source is worried about is Jim Eskin going to embarrass me? Is he going to make me feel embarrassed? Is he going to make my friend, my referral, mad by what his approach is? So you first have to understand that your referral source is allowing you to borrow on their equity. Then, before you ever call the referred party, you should ask specific questions about that person. I can't get into it now, but there's a series of 7 or 8 questions you ask that board member about the referred party. And the greatest thing you can do if you want to turn that into a smoking hot introduction instead of just a warm one, ask that board member or the referral source to join you either on a Zoom call, on a breakfast, even on a phone call as you make the connection between the three of you.
I like that. Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. What characteristics should a
Easy for you to
CEO
say.
or an executive, yeah, I know, an executive director look for when they're hiring a director of development?
That's good. You know, as it really fits my theme of hire for aptitude and train for skill, right? So the characteristics that we look for are tenacity, effective communication skills, ability to relate and build relationships. You talk about integrity, but you can't ask somebody, are you a person of integrity? Likability. There are certain characteristics that you can talk about, but in today's world, it's really important for you to check out references and people that person has known in the past. Easy to come by. Sometimes they're on LinkedIn. Sometimes you can ask for them. But check out the sources, because you want a person whose goal and whose culture and whose values mirror either yours or the particular benefactors that you're appealing to, or the donors. So you have to be very careful in doing your homework. The last thing I need is experience, because some people are just not going to have experience. They haven't had the opportunity. But you can overcome that by hiring the right set of character skills and personality traits.
Very good advice. Okay, here's a very practical question. How many people from a nonprofit should be scheduled for the ask, the solicitation?
How many people are you going to be asking?
Say one.
Then I would never have more than 2 people involved on the ask if it's only one person who's donating. The rule of thumb is no more than one more person than the team that you're asking. Otherwise, it tends to be overwhelming, and you tend to walk on each other. So the best correlation is one-on-one, but at most, if you're meeting with a team of 3 potential donors, I would never have more than 3 or 4 askers involved in the same either meeting or conversation.
Hey, by the way, Jack, can you give me a fist bump?
Yes, bump,
I'll
absolutely.
tell you why. That's page 46 of 10 Simple Fundraising Lessons. You should never have more than 2x number of the donors there. You know, you're overwhelming them.
You really are.
We couldn't agree more. Hey, there's an old saying that the customer is always right. Do you agree with that?
Well, the customer may not always be right, but they're always the customer.
Same thing with the donor.
That's right. So they don't always have to be right, but you have to understand they're always the customer. And so, one great book that I recommend that's outside of your book and mine, that anyone who
The Bible? The Bible?
Well, that too. Yeah, see, we're talking about a lot of books today.
Yeah.
Here is one I recommend for anybody. It's called The Challenger Sale.
Ah.
The Challenger Sale. And you will learn that whether you're in fundraising or whether you're in business, there are kind of 5 different personalities that actually pick up the bag in the morning and either go out the door or they make the phone call. And the number 1 most effective type is called the challenger. I'm not going to explain what that all means, but the book is an amazing read, or you can even go online and download the Cliff Notes to it. But the point is this. I didn't realize early in my career when I had a real job with IBM, I did not realize that I was a challenger. What the challenger salesperson does is he doesn't take the customer's word for it. He doesn't take the word for granted. He challenges the customer. So if Jim says something like, I don't believe my staff can benefit from sales training because it's a totally different animal, I will push back and say, with all due respect, Mr. Eskin, unless they are taught relationship skills and communication skills, they're never going to be as effective as you want them to be. And in other words, you don't take issue with them. You respectfully push back and you challenge them. And I can't tell you how much that means to either the donor or the customer, because they'll say, wow, this guy's not just saying what I want to hear. And ironically, out of the 5 different types of salespeople, the relationship builder is the worst. He's the worst of the 5 because they never want to step on toes. They never want to rub people the wrong way. They never want to hear the word no. So I'm telling you, good link there, the Challenger book.
Yeah, that is. Okay, thank you. I'll tell you what, Jack, we've done 2 sessions together and you mentioned Cliff Notes, but we also have Jack Snacks.
Jack Snacks, yeah.
Let's kind of summarize what we've learned over these 2 shows, okay?
Sure.
And Fundraising's New Frontier. We're talking, the basis of all fundraising was face-to-face, especially when I was asking for that $10 million. And social distancing has changed that. What have we learned about virtual sales and solicitations? If you can't meet face-to-face, what should you be doing over this medium?
Just as exactly as you describe in your slide presentation, is the fact that the benefit of a Zoom meeting like this allows us to communicate on 3 different levels. Right now, You and I are communicating on 3 different levels, Jim, thanks to Zoom.
Yeah.
How we look, how we sound, and what we say. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
In the virtual world, 53% of the message that we communicate is based on how we look, which is the body language, the dress. In your case, I wouldn't wear one, but
Yeah.
what people are bringing to the Zoom meeting, that's more than half the message. 38% of the message is how we sound. Do you sound excited about this fun? Do you sound excited about this charity? Are you excited about the benefits you're delivering to the benefactors? Are you excited about meeting me as a donor? That's 38% of the message is how you sound, and only 7% is what you say. And ironically, when you're in a face-to-face meeting, people are focusing more on what they say than how they look and how they sound. Now, in our virtual world, that's much better than just being on the telephone, because on the telephone, 80% of your message is what you say. I'm sorry, 80% is how you sound, and 20% is what you say. So what you say on the phone, without the benefit of these visuals, is 3 times more important than if you have a virtual contact like we're using today.
By the way, what I like to tell board members and volunteers is that they're afraid of asking for a gift. Have you ever met a child or grandchild who is afraid to ask for something? I like to say, I don't know if you say it about a salesperson, there is a fundraising kid inside every adult. Something, Jack, can you explain your favorite radio station?
Sure. It's kind of funny you said that. A little history. I happened to move from San Antonio to Houston on December 13th, 2004, because I was asked to be the drive time talk personality on a new live business talk show called the Biz Radio Network that was just opening up in Houston for the first time. And so they recruited me because I had that little show that you know of in San Antonio. I used to do the Life's a Sales Call show on KSLR, The Word in South Texas. Well, they recruited me to host the show called Where Wall Street Meets Main Street. And every morning I took my favorite Houstonians and thousands of my best friends, I took them to work in the morning by sharing what's happening on Wall Street today and how that's going to impact you on Main Street. Well, here's what I learned. That was an AM station, a small peanut AM station. People today in the fundraising and sales business, no matter who you talk to, they have their favorite FM station. And you have it on the screen right now. It's WII-FM. What's in it for me? If you can answer that question, if you can turn their radio to their favorite station, which is WII-FM, only then will the donor be open and receptive to your next ask. Now, that's the FM station, WII-FM. I found out through research after I was off the air, after a 5-year run on the air, that people also have a favorite AM station. This is going to be a surprise to you because it's not on your slide deck. Here it is.
Yeah.
Ready? MMFG AM. MMFG AM, which is make me feel good about myself.
Right.
You know, if you feel good about yourself, you want people to walk away and hang up from your virtual call saying, you know what? I really like being on a Zoom call with Jim Eskin. You know why? Because he makes me feel good about myself. They're not getting strokes at home. They're not getting them from their spouse. They're not getting them from their teacher. So if you can be the one that makes somebody feel good about themselves, they will always take your call. Make me feel good about myself. MMFG AM.
Why should salespeople and fundraisers not feel bad when they heard the word no? And I'm going to come on after you say something.
Well, first of all, remember, I don't know the definition of the word no.
Yeah.
I don't know the meaning of the word no. No to me means not now. So when I hear no, what my ears really hear is not now, Jack. We have other elements to think about. We have other objections. We have other choices. So I don't even understand what the word no means. So you should not feel bad about it, because remember, they're not rejecting you as the asker personally. Failure is not personal. Remember, failure is a bruise, it's not a tattoo. Just because somebody says no doesn't mean they will not be more receptive down the road. It's not personal. They're not rejecting you. They're just rejecting your proposal. And so it's never personal. You shouldn't feel bad about that. In fact,
go ahead.
And I was going to say one other thing. I have people that we train, and this would work for fundraisers too. I have my sales clients create something called the Century Club.
Yeah.
Century, Century Club.
Sounds like 100.
That's right, 100. I make them create a list of 100 potential donors.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about not 99, not 105, 100. And if they make your Century Club, I've taken this infinite universe and I've compressed it down to something finite. And every time one of those donors provides a gift and we take them off, I will replace them with someone else. Or if somebody dies or chooses not to do business with you, I may replace them with someone else. But I tell you that because I know sales is a numbers game. After X amount of
fundraising too.
After X amount of no's, you know you're going to get a yes. So I get really excited when somebody rejects me because I now know that I am one no closer to somebody who's finally going to say yes.
Okay, you got Jack snacks. It's time for one of Jim's snacks. I love old movies, and I was watching this movie, and the actress goes, relationship is something you have until something better comes along. And so really, I think in fundraising and sales, we are trying to elevate it from a business relationship to a genuine friendship.
I think that's right, because people die. First of all, nobody likes to be sold. Your donors don't like to be sold. And I have a Jack Snack saying that I always remember in my mind, and that is, man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. It's because nobody likes to be sold, but everybody enjoys the buying process, especially if it's something that they want or they need. So my stock answer to somebody is when they raise their hands and say, "You're trying to sell me something?" I'll say, no, never. My job, I'm actually a buyer's consultant. I want to give you enough information, Jim, so that you can make an informed decision on what to buy. So don't ever think I'm trying to sell you anything. Wow. Consider me your buyer's consultant, and I take the pressure off them to be sold.
Well, I got to talk about pressure. You know, I came out with 10 simple fundraising lessons, and thanks to Jack Snacks, I have to come up with number 11. Explain. I used to always say the toughest thing we do in fundraising is closing a gift. You flipped it around. Talk a little about that.
Yeah, I don't believe in the word closing. Again, you know, I'm a contrarian. And the word closing in sales, there is no place for it. And I'm reminded of one of my favorite sales movies, Glenn Ross.
Oh, give me a fist bump. I love that. Give me a fist bump.
Alec Baldwin in the bullpen with his famous, the ABCs of sales. Always be closing. And he tells Jack Lemmon to get away from the coffee machine because coffee is for closers. And I always love that movie. That's the old style. But the fact is, in business, the last step in my sales process we teach, very similar to your process, instead of closing a deal, instead of closing a gift, we open a new relationship. We open a new case. We open a new account, because the word closing infers, that's it. I got the check. Next. You're at the end of my list. I close the deal. Closing infers the end, whereas opening infers the beginning. Thank you so much for your gift, Jim. I hope this begins a long-term, mutually beneficial, prosperous relationship. I'm glad we opened our relationship today.
Do we have Glenn Ross in our film library? Anyway, I love that movie. You
You
reminded
need to
me.
watch it. You have to
Talk
see it.
about taking the chill out of. Yeah, I know. Talk about taking the chill out of cold calls.
Yeah, we talked about once by the 3x3 strategy, but because you have this slide up here, I want to make a comment. I don't know if I shared this little jack snack with you last time, but you and I are both nonconformists, right?
Yeah.
We kind of tend to zig when others zag. Well, I always remind people that the opposite of courage is not cowardice. The opposite of courage is conformity. So as a nonconformist, I'm sharing a new lexicon of sales that applies to fundraising. And rather than be in the referral business, I prefer to call it a warm introduction business because it sounds much better. It's a lot warmer than a cold referral. And so I replaced the word referral with warm introductions. Jim, could you provide a warm introduction to that friend of yours who owns the business downtown? When I talk about taking the chill out of cold calls, I'm talking about never ever dialing a number without knowing something about the party on the other end. That's all I'm saying. Take the chill out of cold calls.
Didn't we come up with a new word? What was it? Didn't we come up with a new word? There was the introvert, the extrovert, and now we have the mitrovert or something. You want somebody right in the middle, don't you?
Well, I'm not saying in the middle. I'm just really saying not one of the extremes. As personally, we can't deny it. I'm an extrovert, okay? However, I take myself away from the extreme polar of being an extrovert by sharing a few things that an introvert does. For instance, my downtime, when I'm down, I like to be by myself. I like to process. I like to think. Whereas an extrovert always has to be surrounded by people and by stimulus. An introvert enjoys sometimes quiet time with themselves, like I do first thing in the morning. So the choice is find yourself in the middle if you're too extremely on one end or the other.
Okay, we're going to go into our 2-minute drill, but I remember from last session, it was really a rich lesson. You folks in sales have an advantage over us in nonprofits. You have a product that they can touch, they can see, they can hear, they can smell. We don't. How do we overcome that?
Yeah, I have been in the business of selling an intangible full time since 1995.
Yeah.
And what that means is you're selling a concept, you're selling a value equation that does not give you the ability to feel it and measure it and admire it on the shelf of your office. An intangible is always about a concept, a story, a theme with a feel-good ending that delivers strong value and makes both parties feel good. Selling insurance, that's an intangible. You talk about a tough industry. So intangibles in fundraising, again, it's all about the story.
And you were reminding us, Jim and Jack agree, do not overwhelm the donor. We believe there shouldn't be more than 2 solicitors to whatever. There's one donor, there shouldn't be more than 2 of you. By the way, Jack, we typically use a board member of a relationship and a nonprofit, say the CEO or director of development.
Sure.
But now say there's a couple, that allows us to bring in a 3rd person. But do not violate that. Jack, one of the things, mistakes they make in nonprofits, they have a guy like Jim Eskin work on a 50-page proposal that no other than Jim Eskin and his boss really read. Supporting raw material should be used at the very end. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So many people lead with their collaterals, lead with the statistics, lead with the graphs. They walk into the office of the donor and they're there to show up and throw up. My name is Jack Warkenthien. And all they want to do is talk about the charity. They want to talk about the foundation. They want to talk about how effective they are, blah, 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 blah. None of that stuff should even be introduced into a conversation unless it supports the story and the conversation you have first. Collaterals are overrated. Now that we have so much information available electronically, you don't need a lot of brochures. You can send them a link when you're done. You can show them a graph or a survey. You can show them a video testimony, but don't lead with that. Lead with the story.
You know, the greatest fundraising consultant of all time passed away 2 years ago. His name was Gerald Panis. He wrote a book called Asking. And he said he wrote 19 books, okay? He's ahead of both of us. And
Wow.
he said in all his interviews with $1 million donors, they won't influence one iota by the proposal or collateral material. It didn't make any difference.
Well, it's kind of funny because when we started our company, NextStep Solutions, I didn't have a lot of collaterals. So when I was in their office, and I knew when I'm selling sales training, I know there's always competition. And I knew at the time our competition has been in business a lot longer than we were. This is back in the 90s and 2000s. So when people asked me for a brochure, I would often say this. I would say, a brochure? Do you have any sales brochures right now in your office? And they'll say, sure. And they'll go to their file and they'll pull out a sales brochure from a competitor. I'll take that brochure and I'll cross off the name of the competitor and I'll put NextStep Solutions on it and say, this is our brochure. We can do everything that they do. However, we add value and we guarantee results. Now, if you can show me in their brochure where it says that you don't pay us unless we increase your sales, well, then we truly don't have a differentiator.
Jack, you've given us 2 golf dates 2 weeks in a row. What are you doing next Wednesday?
Playing golf. Why do you ask?
Just kidding me. We're not going to ask you back. Guess what? But it's going to take a holy man to replace you. We're so excited. We're going to have Father David Garcia, who's listening. Hello, Father. He's the former rector of San Fernando Cathedral. He is a spirit lifter. He is, and by the way, he is a enormously effective fundraiser. He raised over $40 million in his career.
Yikes.
So we couldn't get Jack working 3 weeks in a row. We're replacing you with a holy man. But Jack, thank you so much for giving us 2 of your Golf Wednesdays. This has been such a rich conversation. And we are posting a short written summary right now on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then thank you to John Largent. He's going to do a spin cycle, and we're going to post the recording and slides about an hour from now.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, Jim. Continued success. And let's meet offline and dream of the possibilities.
Absolutely. And to our nonprofit partners, thank you. Keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on asking, and we'll see you next week. And everyone, stay safe. Good night. Thank you.
Great job on the webinars, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. John?